Hey, peace to the family of Uhuru, Amani Nanguvu. This is Ikemba, host of We Charge Colonialism Podcast and Book Club. As you can see, I'm on a solo right now, but Sister Natasha may be joining us a little later. And Brother Frank, he won't be joining us this morning, last minute situation or, emergency, I should say. So he won't be joining us this morning, but want to wish him well. Today we're starting at earlier time because of an event that's going on at our program that's going on at 10 a.m. That I also want to encourage you all to be to register for. It's an Africana study series, and if you check our Instagram, you can get the information. Let me just double check. We Charge Colonialism on Instagram. You'll be able to see the information for that Africana Studies series. So, registers from 10 to 1 a.m. 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. today. So, make sure that you register for that. It's going to be a powerful program. The Africana Studies series, I've conducted a couple of workshops for the Africana Studies series. There's usually, some very powerful speakers, lecturers that are facilitating those workshops. So check that out. Also, I'm going to put this in the chat. Make sure too, if this is your first time with us, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We Charge Colonialism so that you can get updates. Make sure you like and share as well. Share this podcast. Uhuru. Yes, hit that like button for sure. Conrad Sayero, always on point. Make sure you hit that like button and share. We're going to have a powerful discussion this morning. Probably would not be that long, depending on if Natasha joins or not. But we are just an introduction. We Charge Colonialism. That's been going strong for I'm going to say, maybe around 4 years now. We're an anti-colonial think tank and do tank. Our mission is to counter the colonial narrative, the information that is generated by the colonial media, the colonial education system, right, that attempts to maintain the system of colonialism by controlling the minds of our people. So one of the things that we do at We Charge Colonialism is make sure that we are controlling the narrative. It's unfortunate that we have to be on a platform by institution or organization that works in the interest of colonialism. But that's the thing too, when it comes to colonial capitalism, they'll plant the seeds of their own destruction, right? They will fund the tools or means of their downfall, as long as they can make some money off of it, right? They're so, long term and short term in their interests, short term in the sense when it comes to their greed and wanting that immediate gratification, but they are long term in regards to just like looking towards the future and seeing how they can secure or maintain the system and secure their interests. So there's, those two thought processes that works together, but it's their short-term objectives and aims, right, that we have to capitalize, quote unquote, capitalize off of. And I don't mean that in a monetary sense, but in a sense where, we can use their greed to their disadvantage and to our own advantage. So, hopefully that all makes sense. So today we're going to be speaking of, overturning colonial capitalism, right, and using their tools against them. We're going to be talking about the Black Revolution in the second half of this podcast and book club. As usual, we start off with our weekly roundup. Me, host and producer right now. So I'm going to put the link to Peace. Oh, I got my brother in the house. What's going on, Jacqueline? Oh man, come on. You gotta come to Philly. You gotta come to Philly, my brother. Uh that link looks kind of crazy, but let me know if that link works. That's the link to the book that we're reading, Malcolm X Speaks. I don't know why it's so long, but that's the link to our reading, which is also found in our folder, WCC book folder. Hopefully that you all have access to. So we'll be reading Malcolm X selected speeches in the second half. Um, Also, just a quick announcement. I'll bring this up again. I'm on the Malcolm X committee, the Claim Malcolm X Day committee, and we'll be having the 10th annual, I think 10th, 11th annual Malcolm X uh, Day event this May 19th. So if you're looking to then, or if you're looking to volunteer or donate, be a part of the building of this Malcolm X Day event, definitely reach out to us, reach out to me. I can get you all the information and let you know how you can participate or support. Next year is going to be the 100-year anniversary of the birth of Malcolm X, right? And so we're revving up for that, and I'm looking forward to continue to uplift the legacy of Malcolm X, because I personally think X, is the answer when we look at his philosophy. So definitely looking forward to getting into that later on. So I'm going to get into story. It's a lot going on in Haiti right now, and so I want to highlight what's happening there. So I'm going to pull up this story. All right. There we go. How humanitarian aid is impacting Haiti and how locals actually, this isn't my story right here, even though I'm talking about Haiti. Here we go. Let me make sure you are seeing what I'm seeing right now. Make sure y'all like and share, And let's do this again. All right, here we go. Hope the family out there is doing well. Are we here? All right, what to know about the crisis of violence, politics, hunger engulfing Haiti? All right, just checking to see if I see that. All right, so this story, of course, like what's happening in Haiti is like on the radar of many people. Haiti has for centuries been dealing with internal conflict and outside or foreign intrusion or undermining of the development and governance of Haiti. Right, this has been the history of Haiti, and it hasn't changed since Haiti has won its independence. Right. So this is an article you can see by Patrick Smith and Charles Adams. Patrick Smith, colonizer. Charles Adams is an African. I just thought that context was important. So a long simmering crisis over Haiti's ability to govern itself, particularly after a series of natural disasters and an increasing dire humanitarian emergency, has come to a head in the Caribbean nation as its de facto president remains stranded in Puerto Rico and its people starve and live in fear of rampant violence. One thing, like throughout this article, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but throughout this article, there's always, there's sort of this pointing to the earthquake in 2010 as the origins of the crisis in Haiti right now, right? They repeatedly speak, at least 3 or 4 times about that earthquake and how that sort of was the catalyst of the internal conflict and the current situation that we have in Haiti. And I think that's important to bring up because I think this is, again, when we talk about the colonial media, how they paint or like to push a narrative as if colonialism isn't the origin of the problems of African people around the world. That is the narrative we have to counter, right? And this is not to say that the earthquake did not play a part. The earthquake exacerbated already an already dire situation in Haiti, right? But you have to give that context. You're not giving the full story. So just to continue on, the chaos engulfing the country has been bubbling for more than a year, only for it to spill over on the global stage on Monday night as Haiti's unpopular Prime Minister Ariel Henry agreed to resign once a transitional government is brokered by other Caribbean nations and parties, including the U.S. Right? Not by the Haitians themselves, but by outsiders. But the very idea of transitional government brokered not by Haitians, but by outsiders is one of the main reasons Haiti, a nation of 11 million, is on the brink, according to humanitarian workers and residents who have called for Haitian-led solutions. What we're seeing in Haiti has been building since 2010, earthquake, said Greg Beckett, an associate professor of anthropology at Western University, Canada. So just going to read a couple more paragraphs. In the power vacuum that followed the assassination of democratically elected president Jovenel Moise and I butchered that first name, but former President Moise in 2021, Henry, who was prime minister under Moise, assumed power with the support of several nations, including the U.S. When Haiti failed to hold elections multiple times, Henry said it was due to logistical problems or violence. Protests rang out against him. By the time Henry announced last year the elections would be postponed again to 2025, armed groups that were already active in Port-au-Prince, the capital, dialed up the violence. Right. So, for those who are just like really tuning into what's happening in Haiti, and I'm gonna go to I see in the chat too. I'm gonna check that out in a second. But when it, that's just sort of just a brief background of what's happening in Haiti and what's happening. One of the things that are happening is you see politicians who are aligning themselves with some of these armed groups are using the withholding or the halting of a democratic process as a pretext, right, to cause disruption in the country. Now, when we look at, though, of course, like you have the eternal conflict, would you look at what's going on the outside, and those people who are funding are sending resources to Haiti. This is the real issue for me. Not the only issue is that there's like this breadbasket or this money that's being dropped into Haiti that's causing more internal conflict, that's causing more chaos and confusion, because now where is that money going, right? And you can't tell me that those people who are on the outside they're sending money. Well, there's two things. They're just sending money and not involved in the process as far as like where that money is being spent and who it's going to. Then they're purposely causing confusion. They know that there's going to be a struggle over the allocation of these resources, but they could care less. So you have the colonizer just creating a situation where, okay, we from the beginning, we created this chaos in the country. And what we're going to do to exacerbate it is that we're going to send these resources over there because we know that they're going to fight over these resources. People are starving, people are hungry, oppressed, and exploited, right? And then the other situation, which I also believe that's happening, right? Because I never think that there's just, this one thing that's happening. It's a complex situation. The other thing is that you have those people who from outside who have those resources coming into the country with those resources and are working with certain groups, right? Because they have a vested interest in the country, right? And the rebuilding or restructuring of Haiti, right? There's always, in war and conflict, there's always opportunity for the exploiter. And so they're there and they're working along with those armed groups, so those people who are leading those armed groups, right? And this, again, this is causing a lot more chaos and confusion in the country. And this is the history of what has been happening in Haiti, from the embargoes on Haiti to starve Haiti out, which we have to go back to, right, to the current situation. Uh, and I think the only way that you can like really overturn this, I think the solution is that you have African nations come together, right, and sit down at the table with the leaders of Haiti, not a leader of Haiti, but the leaders of Haiti, and sit down and they discuss a way forward, right? A way that resources that can be allocated to benefit Haiti, right? And when it comes to the colonizers, Europeans, there has to be a demand for reparations, right? This is under the current system. If we are to continue in the current system that we are a part of, there has to be reparations. If not, then African people will continue to be dependent on the colonizer. That's just the way the system is set up. The system is set up for whatever African people contribute to the system. Because of Europeans being on the pedestal, I sit on the pedestal of African people. Whatever we do in this system economically is going to benefit them because they control the reins of the political economy. And so there's no other way around it. So if we continue to be a part of the system, if there's no reparations, then we'll continue to be colonized, we'll continue to be enslaved. And the other solution, which I think that we should be working towards, is not necessarily having reparations as a strategy, but the ultimate solution to our problem is to build our own political economy. And if the European wants to be a part of that economy, it's on our terms, right? And so, when it comes to any sort of trade, now we dictate the terms of trade. We have the resources. There shouldn't be anyone outside of Africa, that is dictating the resources. I'm sorry, dictating the terms of trade, right? We shouldn't be dependent on anyone. Everyone should be dependent on us. And then wherever you go around the world, it is African people, not solely, but African people are the backbone of the economy, the political economy internationally. And it's not to say that there are other groups, indigenous, the Native Americans, the Aboriginals of Australia, and the Asian. There's other groups as well that are being exploited. But in terms of just when it comes to Africa, we have to think African first. And anyone else that wants to align with the liberation of African people, because it may mean their own liberation, then they can align with that agenda. So, I know some people, the link doesn't work. All right, let me see what I can do about that then. Let me see what I can do about that. So I'm going to reshare the link to the book in a minute. UN needs to leave Haiti alone. Yeah, the UN needs to definitely, there was, discussion. This is why Ariel Henry, he was over in Africa, right? And then, he ends up in Puerto Rico. But he was over in Africa, in Kenya, to try to get support, UN support and Kenyan support for stabilizing the stabilization of Haiti, right? Now, one of the contradictions with that was raised by the Haitian people was that Kenyans do not speak French, and they do not speak Creole, right? So if you have a people, armed force in Haiti that does not speak the language of the people, what are they there for? The only reason behind that is you're bringing them in there strictly to repress the people. They don't need to communicate. They don't need to build any type of relations with the people of Haiti. We only need you there to carry out or to execute extreme force to bring about, whatever order that the current president is looking for, right? And so that was a serious contradiction that many of the Haitian people did not agree with. So they see the writing on the wall, right? They're not fools. They've been through this before. As a matter of fact, their whole existence has been struggle against foreign domination, foreign oppression, exploitation. All right, so Haiti's interesting story. I spent a lot of time on that. I'm going to put the link to this book. I'm not sure why that did not work, but we're going to try that again. So again, we're reading Malcolm X's selected speeches. And this particular speech that Malcolm is given, it's given on April the 8th of 1964. So we're looking at 60 years ago. This powerful speech is given 60 years ago. And also, just to give some more context, think about what's happening with Malcolm during this time. April 8th. This is a month after Malcolm splits with the Nation of Islam. So let me try this again. So this is a month after Malcolm splits with the Nation of Islam. Hopefully this works. I'm going to put this link in here. And so I think that should work right there. So Malcolm's message is going to begin to be it's going to begin to shift, right, from a more like religious tone in his message to a more political and economic tone. And not to say that Malcolm was always a spiritual guy, and he always spoke about the political climate, right, of African people and what we need to do politically. But you can see once Malcolm leaves the nation, his message now becomes a little bit more broader. A lot more people are going to be able to relate to Malcolm X. And again, not to say that they weren't before, but many people who weren't Muslim, may have not given Malcolm even the opportunity, right? Didn't even give him an ear because of his religious affiliation, with many of our people being Christian, right? And so you have that even today, where you have people, because someone is of another spiritual or religious affiliation, they won't give them the time of day. But I think what you're going to see when Malcolm leads the Nation of Islam, and he tones down, the devil talk, even though he still calls out the colonizer, but he doesn't use that language as much, at least in public. All right. The speech is chapter 4, I believe. Let me see. Yeah, we're going to look at chapter 4, the Black Revolution. The link is in the chat. So I'm going to share that. All right. Brother Malcolm, 60 years ago. And 60 years ago, Malcolm gives this powerful speech. And, the Black Revolution is still relevant. And you can, when I thought about this title, I asked that question. Right? Are we fighting for liberation or to stay on the plantation? That's a serious question right there. Are we fighting for liberation or to stay on the plantation? I'm looking at the Malcolm X became a Muslim. He was not about Black empowerment. That's an interesting thought. Malcolm X is the ideological father of the Black Power movement. So but don't be perplexed or stemmy. We are at war, comrade. What we are willing to do. Right on. Yeah. So of recolonization and genocide, we on the other hand can't make the mistake of not looking at the seriousness of our plight, our own demise in the colonial war. Yes, brother Sayero, I unite, most definitely. Um, and going back to this question, right? Are we fighting for liberation or to stay on the plantation? And I was just having this conversation with some of my colleagues, and that came up as far as urban cities, and we got into a discussion as far as like where we wanted to live. Where do we see ourselves in the future? And we were talking about moving outside of America, in the future, just because of the direction that America it's been going in. And America is, I see, the destruction of America is imminent. The destruction of America is imminent. And it's like, do I really want to be here? And it's not, I know that my people are here and are living here, but I think, if our people do not become conscious of the direction that America is going and what America is doing to the rest of the world, and we're not building to separate ourselves from that, right, to distance ourselves from what America is doing, then we're going to sink with the ship. And right now, it's only a minority of us, I feel, in the Pan-African Black nationalist community that really see the importance of us really separating ourselves from America. And we get caught up in this thing where when we start talking about separating, that becomes blasphemy for a lot of people. When you're talking about separation, they think like reverse racism and all of these other, silly arguments that they make. I could care less if the America, maybe there's people who are Black, Chinese, and so forth that consider themselves to be American, at this point, right? So, there's more than just white people who are upholding the system of colonial capitalism. And I think the European is at the top of that hierarchy that's dominating everything. But anyone who aligns themselves with the enemy and continues to want to uphold the system, these are people that we're struggling against as well. So with that being said, we find ourselves in a situation in America where we're fighting not only against the European, but against other people as well that may look like us, or so-called, people of color. So what we have to do, we have to begin to think of an exit plan. But I think like going to the Black Revolution, it is still relevant, this speech. The last thing I'll say before I get into reading, um, the plantation. What is the plantation? In that discussion, going back to that discussion I was having, uh, the urban cities. If you look at what urban city, what's the sole purpose of the urban cities, right? It's one big plantation. You have millions of people packed in these urban cities, right? That are running in circles, or like the hamster on the wheel, just running in place, right? Where our lives consist around making money, 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 so that we can survive in these urban cities, right? Or escape to the suburbs, but still, sort of connected to the urban city, where they create this sort of metropolitan area. It only expands this plantation, but everybody is just bustling, just trying to survive. We are in survival mode, but it's just one big plantation. And I don't want to spend too much time on that, but it's just something to like really take a deep dive in and think about it. Is this how we want to live our lives, where everything continues to rise with inflation? And so when we think we make enough money to escape, the plantation, they just raise the prices, right? And so we continue to be locked in or tied to the economy. So with that being said, let me get into this. Malcolm. So on April 8th, 1964, Malcolm X gave a speech on the Black Revolution at a meeting sponsored by the Militant Labor Forum at Palms Garden in New York. And this forum is connected with the Militant, a socialist weekly, which Malcolm's considered one of the best newspapers anywhere. The audience was around 3/4 white. Most of it responded favorably to the talk. There was some sharp exchanges during the discussion period between the speaker and white liberals who resented his attacks on liberalism and the Democratic Party and tried to pin the label of hate monger on him. The talk gave Malcolm an opportunity for a fuller presentation of his arguments for internationalizing the Black struggle by indicting the United States government before the United Nations for racism. It is notable also for his statement that a bloodless revolution was still possible in the United States under certain circumstances. The Democratic Party and white liberals are going to fight tooth and nail against any talks of Black nationalism, Pan-Africanism, Black unity, Black power. And the reason is because they are dependent upon the support of Black people. They're dependent on African people, right? So when you talk about that, they will lose their power, right? Because the conservative among the whites, the conservative represents the majority. And I want you to like really think about that as well. The conservative amongst the white people represents the numerical majority, and so without the support of African people and other non-European people, the white liberal would not be able to put forth it would not be able to achieve its agenda. So let me get into this. Friends and enemies, tonight I hope that we can have a little fireside chat with as few sparks as possible being tossed around, especially because of the very explosive condition that the world is in today. Sometimes when a person's house is on fire and someone comes in yelling fire, instead of the person who is awakened by the yell being thankful, he makes the mistake of charging the one who awakened him with having set the fire. I hope that this little conversation tonight about the Black Revolution won't cause many of you to accuse us of igniting it when you find it at your doorstep. That's right. Don't accuse we charge colonialism. This fire was already ignited, right? We only informing the people. During recent years, there has been much talk about a population explosion. Whenever they are speaking of the population explosion, in my opinion, they are referring primarily to the people of Asia or in Africa. The Black to you may represent a small minority in the so-called Negro community, but they just happen to be composed of the type of ingredient necessary to fuse or ignite the entire Black community. And this is one thing that whites, whether you call yourselves liberal or conservatives or racist or whatever else you might choose to be, one thing that you have to realize is where the Black community is concerned, although the large majority you come in contact with may impress you as being moderate and patient and loving and long-suffering and all that kind of stuff, the minority who you consider to be Muslims or nationalists happen to be made of the type of ingredient that can easily spark the Black community. This should be understood because to me, a powder keg is nothing without a fuse, right? And so this is how we have to look at ourselves, those who are conscious of the need of a revolution, a Black revolution. Those of us who are conscious of the need that we need a nation of our own. We may represent the minority, but we are the fuse. We are the fuse that's going to light the powder keg. So we have to continue to be resilient. I know that the struggle against the colonizer and to educate and raise the consciousness of our people we can sometimes be disheartened, right? Disillusioned, many times discouraged to continue on to do this work, right? But we have to remain resilient. We have to also make sure that we are the example, right, for the next generation, because it's not even, it's not only about our liberation, it's the liberation of the next generation. So whatever we can pass on, if we aren't able to achieve all of our goals during this lifetime, we can at least make sure that the next generation of people are equipped with the information, right? The information and the will to continue to struggle for our liberation. It should also be understood that the racial sparks that are ignited here in America today could easily turn into a flaming fire abroad, which means it can engulf all the people of this earth into a giant race war. You cannot you cannot confine it to one little neighborhood or one little community or one little country. What happens to just talked about Haiti, right? One country or island. What happens to a black man in America today happens to the black man in Africa. What happens to the black man in America and Africa happens to the black man in Asia and to the man down in Latin America. What happens to one of us today happens to all of us. And when this is realized, I think that the whites who are intelligent, even if they aren't moral or aren't just or aren't impressed by legalities, those who are intelligent will realize that when they touch this one, they are touching all of them. And this in itself will have a tendency to be a checking factor, right? And so we aren't completely there, but this process of us getting there where Africans everywhere, black people everywhere realize the importance of supporting and backing everyone's struggle, or if any brutality happens to an African anywhere, that we support that African, whether they're in Haiti, Jamaica, Ghana, Congo, Kenya, or right here in the United States. This is what this is the point that we're getting to. And I think what you've seen in Burkina, in the Sahel region, is an example of that, where Burkina Faso and Mali say, you touch Niger, hey, you're going to have a problem with us as well. Right? That was the ultimate Pan-Africanism. Man, how can we not be inspired by what we see in the Sahel region? And Brother Frank, who wasn't able to join this morning, he was going to speak on the story of those Sahel countries, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, creating their own currency, a single currency among them, right, to get away from the franc. Right. And so that was going to be his story. And he'll probably, speak on that next time that he joins us. But again, like, this is the ultimate example. This is something that we should be doing. With that's something that we can do even here based in the United States. That's something that we can do among ourselves, is create sort of a currency among ourselves. When you spend in our community, you have to spend using this currency. Now, it's not as easy as I just said it, right? There's some things that we would have to do to back that currency, right? But it's not impossible, right? We would need banks, central banks, and there's a lot that comes with it, but it's not impossible. And if it sounds crazy, I want you to do some research and look in the United States where there are towns that actually exist, communities that exist in the United States that have created their own currency, right? So I'm not speaking off the rails. But when you have these type of conversations, it scares, some Black people, because they think that we can't do for self. They think that we need the European, we need their system, we need their currency, right? But we have to become independent thinkers and think outside the box. Yeah. I mean, that's an example. But they had that as far as the pound. They had the pound, even before the euro. So they just continued to go with their own currency. But there's people who are actually like creating their own, currency that never even existed before. So, just to continue on with this, the seriousness of this situation must be faced up to. I was in Cleveland last night, Cleveland, Ohio. In fact, I was there Friday, Saturday, and yesterday. Last Friday, the warning was given that this is a year of bloodshed, that the Black man has ceased to turn the other cheek, that he has ceased to be nonviolent, that he has ceased to feel that he must be confined by all these restraints that are put upon him by white society, and struggling for what white society says he was supposed to have had 100 years ago. And when he spoke about Cleveland, I think in Cleveland, he was in Cleveland for a few times, but the ballot or the bullet speech. He gave the ballot or the bullet speech in Cleveland and Detroit, I believe. So when he's talking about Cleveland, he may have been given that ballot or the bullet speech. He's talking about bloodshed. Because the speech he gave, the ballot or bullet speech, not too long after he left the Nation of Islam as well. So it's all around the same time. So today, when the black man starts reaching out for what America says, as a matter of fact, somebody look up, I should have did this before, but I wanted the anniversary of the ballot or the bullet speech. That should be around this time right now. The first one, he gave it twice. So today, when the black man starts reaching out for what America says are his rights, the black man feels that he is within his rights. When he becomes the victim of brutality by those who are depriving him of his rights to do whatever is necessary to protect himself. An example of this was taking place last night that was a pause, necessary to protect himself. An example of this was taking place last night at the same time in Cleveland, where the police were putting water hoses on our people there and also throwing tear gas at them. And they met a hell of stones, a hell of rocks, a hell of bricks. A couple of weeks ago in Jacksonville, Florida, a young teenage Negro was throwing Molotov cocktails, right? This is the stuff you don't read about in the history books. I just want to put that out there. Malcolm is getting into some scenarios that when we watch film on civil rights movements, we just see our people being brutalized and attacked by the police and other white races, I should say. But there's no resistance. And so I appreciate this. This is why primary sources are important. I try to tell my students when you get to dig into these primary sources and look at what some of the people who are on the ground saying, you can get some of these other stories that's not being put out in the colonial media and being pushed in their narrative, right? This is the resistance part that we can be inspired by when we see, okay, the police in the 60s, we had people when they were being sprayed with water hoses, our people were throwing tear gas was thrown at them. They threw stones, they threw rocks, they threw bricks, right, at these police officers. So when you hear and it's out of ignorance, this is no disrespect to those people who say we're not our ancestors. What? This is why it's important that we control our narrative, because this is what our ancestors were doing as well. You're not the first person to light something on fire, right? You're not the first person to throw stones and rocks, at the police, right? Our ancestors, there's a history of resistance by African people. I just had to, man, Molotov cocktails, right? This is what our ancestors was doing. What you mean? You are our ancestors. You're continuing the tradition of resistance, right? Whether it's with force or nonviolent resistance, whatever, we use all of those tactics. So excuse me, just was getting a little passionate about that. Well, Negroes didn't do this 10 years ago, but what you should learn from this is that they are waking up. It was stones yesterday, Molotov cocktails today. It will be hand grenades tomorrow, and whatever else is available the next day. The seriousness of this situation must be faced up to. You should not feel that I am inciting someone to violence. I'm only warning of a powder keg situation. You can take it or leave it. If you take the warning, perhaps you can still save yourself. But if you ignore it or ridicule it, well, death is already at your doorstep. There are 22 million African Americans who are ready to fight for independence right here. When I say fight for independence right here, I don't mean any nonviolent fight or turn the other cheek fight. Those days are gone. Those days are over. If George Washington didn't get independence for this country nonviolently, and if Patrick Henry didn't come up with a nonviolent statement, and you taught me to look upon them as patriots and heroes, then it's time for you to realize that I have studied your book well. 1964 will see the Negro revolt evolve and merge into the worldwide Black Revolution that has been taking place on this earth since 1945. The so-called revolt will become a real Black revolution. Now, the Black revolution has been taking place in Africa and Asia and Latin America. When I say Black, I mean non-white, black, brown, red, or yellow. Our brothers and sisters in Asia who were colonized by the Europeans, our brothers and sisters in Africa who were colonized by the Europeans, and in Latin America, the peasants who were colonized by the Europeans, have been involved in a struggle since 1945 to get the colonialists or the colonizing powers, the Europeans, off their land, out of their country. All right, so I'm gonna pause there. Let me go this read this one more. This is a real revolution. Revolution is always based on land. Revolution is never based on begging somebody for an integrated cup of coffee. Revolutions are never fought by turning the other cheek. Revolutions are never based upon love your enemy and pray for those who spitefully use you. And revolutions are never waged singing, we shall overcome. Revolutions are based upon bloodshed. Revolutions are never compromising. Revolutions are never based upon negotiations. Revolutions are never based upon any kind of tokenism whatsoever. Revolutions are never even based upon that which is begging a corrupt society or a corrupt system to accept us into it. Revolutions overturn systems, and there is no system on this earth which has proven itself more corrupt, more criminal than this system that in 1964 still colonizes 22 million African Americans, still enslaves 22 million Afro Americans. I think that's a good stopping point. Man, there's a lot to say right there. What we got going on here? And the speech was delivered on two occasions. The first being April 3rd. All right, so we got the 60th anniversary. Let me put that up there. Oh, April 3rd, 1964. So that's good for people to know, just in case when that 60-year anniversary of the Ballot of the Bullet speech comes up on April 3rd, we want to have some discussions around that, locally in our libraries, cafes, schools, right? Use that as a teaching moment, right? Let's spread that. Let's listen to Malcolm. 60 years later, is the Ballot of the Bullet speech still relevant? Are we going into an election year? Donald Trump, Joe Biden, right? We don't have time to get into that discussion right now. I'm going to save that, but come on, this speech is still relevant. Black people are still. I said I'm not going to get into it, but April 3rd, 1964. Let's uplift that speech. Ballot of the Bullet, 60-year anniversary of Malcolm X speech. Also, John Kim, appreciate that. He said white town in Africa with their own money. I know that there's a few. I don't know if you're talking about South Africa. Where are you talking about exactly? I know South Africa has a few white towns. More than one, at least two. And I didn't know they had their own currency though. That's interesting. I definitely have to look into that. But there's a couple of white towns in South Africa, all white towns in Africa, right? How you in Africa creating a system of segregation, creating a system of Jim Crow segregation? Interesting. Cincinnati, yeah, my family's in Cincinnati. Last family reunion I went to was in Cincinnati, so I definitely need to get out there. I've been out there a few times. Yeah. Prairie Methodist Church in Cleveland, Ohio, on the second being on April 12th. Oh, okay. All right. So we didn't even come upon those dates. Thank you. Appreciate that, Conrad Sayero, King Solomon Baptist Church. Appreciate that, man. That history, that background. Yes. Black anti-colonial movement. Am I getting this right? Oh yeah. Hey, that's the only movement I think that we should be a part of, and it has to be like, if the Asians are if the Chinese is fighting against colonialism, in their context they should be fighting, right, a Chinese led anti-colonial movement. If they're not, right, then they have the risk of coming under the power of the people who are leading that colonial movement. And so, I say that to say that, Black people, African people who are fighting against colonialism, uh, that fight has to be led by African people, or run the risk of um, being dependent or under the control and power of another group of people who may have their own interests at heart in the struggle. And this is why the European tends to want to integrate any movement that African people have, whether it's in Europe, the United States, or anywhere around the world. They want to integrate into that movement and try to influence the movement, even if it's not led. That's the other issue that we run into. Even if the movement is not led by the European and led by African people, the colonizer who we open the door and bring into that movement will attempt to influence that movement. So if they're there has to be parameters set in the way that they participate, or any group participate in a movement led by Black and African people. Or you find yourself in a situation like the NAACP or other multiracial organizations, right? Because these people, the NAACP, for example, you have a person like Joe Springard. When you look at the history, Joe Springard, who served as the first and second president of the NAACP, this was somebody who worked in the Military Intelligence Association or agency during World War II, and who was giving the charge to go into the Black community and influence the movement, the Black movement during that time. This was during the time of Hubert Harrison, Marcus Garvey. So they were worried about the Black radical element in the United States. And so Joe Springard was charged to influence the narrative, right? And to influence a more moderate approach to the struggle for Black people, right? And so we still deal with those situations today. And they look like us. So I think that's the problem we have now, is because a lot of times it is Black people who are coming with the message, because we're too smart now. We're too not let me say it. We're intelligent enough. We learned the game. So we're intelligent enough to know that what the European is going to try to do when they come into our community. So now what happens is that they send people who look just like us into our community, speaking the same language and message, and advocating the same message that the white liberal or Democrat would if they were allowed in our community. So we had to be very careful, right? Our language is the language of liberation, Black nationalism, Pan-Africanism, separating ourselves from colonial capitalism, right? Building our own political economy, right? This has to be the language. If the people aren't talking that language, then we already know who they're working with, or who they're working for, right? If people are talking the language, if they're saying, voting is the answer, that's a clue. That's I think a red flag right there. That's a sign, that this person may not be working in the interests of Black liberation, Black independence, right? And it's not to say that, vote. I'm not saying that a person who's saying that we have to vote, a person that's saying that voting is the answer. If they want to use voting as a strategy, right? Okay. But what's the other language that's coming with that, right? What's the end goal? What's the end goal of voting, right? Are we trying to vote our way into the system, or we trying to vote to gain resources to bring back to the community that we can use as a means to liberate ourselves from the system? So we have to be very careful. But with that being said, man, appreciate y'all. This, of course, always, and appreciate Baba Jalil Mutakim for bringing us that book and bringing us that message. make sure you pick that book up. We are our own liberators. All right. So appreciate everybody for tapping in. Again, check the We Charge Colonialism Instagram for the registration link for the Africana Studies series workshops that's going to be going on today at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. You still may have time to register for that. And also, just make sure that you stay up to date on our page, as we'll continue to update you with any programs, any events that's happening. And last thing I want to say is make sure you join organization. Join organization. There's, I don't care if it's the Black Alliance for Peace, supporting us at We Charge Colonialism, finding out how you can be a part of this. The International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, the African People's Socialist Party, so many, organizations, the Pan-African community, the Pan-African community, PACA. I forgot what the A stands for. Association. Somebody help me out with that. But I feel bad. The Tanea family in Baltimore. Supporting them, finding out how you could be a part of that organization. You got the December 12th movement, the Operation Power. Some organizations in New York. Man, there's so many good organizations and great organizations out there that's doing work. If you're not a part of an organization, create your own organization. This is something that Kwame Ture used to tell us. All African Revolutionary Party is another organization. So if you are not a part, you don't want to join the organization, create your own organization. And find a way where we can all come together and work, despite our various organizations and different ideologies. Find a way that we can come together and move forward. So that'll be my last message today. Again, appreciate y'all for joining. Still got the weekly roundup up there, but it's all good. It's all good. Man. All right. Peace to the family. Black Power, Uhuru, all day.